On this episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, I welcome Dick Stevens to the Buck and Honey's remote studios. In 1964, Stevens was a member of the Dodgeville boys basketball team that pulled off a stunning state basketball championship win over Milwaukee North, an underdog story for the ages. A multi-sport athlete and later a beloved teacher for over 30 years, Dick's legacy stretches far beyond the court. In retirement, he faced his biggest battle yet, surviving a heart emergency. Grit and determination carried him through. This will be a good one. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What is up wherever you are, whatever you are doing? I hope you're having a great day. Welcome to another episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Decorah. We're in the Buck and Honey's remote studios on the east side of our great capital city of Madison, Wisconsin. You can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and YouTube at Survive and Thrive 8791. You can follow the podcast and get access to previous episodes on Facebook at Survive and Thrive 8791. The podcast. Don't forget to hit that follow button wherever you listen to the show. Leave me a comment if you liked what you heard. If there's a topic or you know a guest who would love to tell their story, email me at tdecora@gmail.com. Glad you could join us. Our mission is to share stories and conversations that make you cry, laugh, and think, stimulating emotions, creating laughter, and inspiring the mind. A new episode will air on Monday and Thursday morning featuring a wide range of guests. The podcast will touch on many subjects such as, but not limited to, grief, loss of a loved one, recovery, professional setback, mental illness, success despite challenges, etc. Our guests will share how they learn to survive and thrive. Before I introduce our esteemed guest next to me, I'd like to highlight the upcoming Survive and Thrive 8791 Mental Health and Recovery Conference taking place in Madison, Wisconsin. Join us on Wednesday and Thursday, October 29th and 30th at the Ho-Chunk Nation Madison branch office located on the east side. This powerful two-day event will feature several speakers who will share their stories through mental health and addiction challenges and how they've learned to survive and thrive. You can register for the conference on our conference website. If you're a business or an advocate for mental health and recovery, we invite you to partner with us through sponsorship opportunities. Our website is surviveandthrive8791.com. That is surviveandthrive8791.com. This is where we get into our guest and episode intro. According to the internet, and the internet is always right. Correct, Dick?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely, he says. Well, I don't need the internet in my house. I don't need the World Wide Web. I don't need Alexa. I got my wife, and she's always right. So, according to an AI, artificial intelligence overview, while it's difficult to pinpoint the exact number of men undergoing triple bypass surgery each year, it's estimated that nearly 400,000 coronary artery bypass graft surgeries happen, including those with 3 blocked arteries. They're performed annually in the U.S., and our guest today had that happen, and we're going to get to that here as we go along, but he also had some really cool thing happen, and we'll get to that as well. But today, I welcome Dick Stevens to the Buck and Honey's remote studios. Raised in Dodgeville, Wisconsin, Dick attended Dodgeville High School and is a proud Dodger. After high school, Dick would take his talents to the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, where he was a member of the men's baseball team and also the men's basketball team. After his playing days were over, Dick would start his teaching and coaching career across the border in Schaumburg, Illinois. Today, I'm so glad he could join us. Dick Stevens, what is up?
Great to be here, Tim.
Great to be here, he says. Absolutely. How's the summer been going for you?
I'm enjoying it. It just goes too fast. And I think anybody, as they get older, it seems like everything's going too fast.
I just had a guest on here a couple days ago. He just retired, kind of like I did last year and like you did a few years ago.
Yes, it was.
But he's in that first summer where after you retire, the summer is always like the summer. But then it doesn't really hit you until you don't have to go back for professional development or, the start of those meetings before school start. Yep. How was that for you when you had that first summer?
The first summer of retirement?
This first summer, and then that fall when you were supposed to go back, but you didn't.
Well, I think as you're on your own, so to speak, is that for me, I miss the bells that used to ring as a teacher. because it
The
would
bells, my ears are still ringing all the time.
move on. And with this, it's more grandkids and family things, and I guess the time just goes by faster when you're not paying attention to the bell ringing and sending you to what you know is the next class, group of kids. So I find I'm still adjusting.
No, I'm on the opposite side of you in that you miss the bells. I couldn't stand the bells. It was like you were Pavlov's dogs. And even with my teaching career, we taught in the block schedule, so it wasn't ringing every 52 minutes like a lot of schools.
Yep.
Ours rang every 85 minutes, so there were fewer bells, but drove me nuts. Any plans or travel this summer?
My wife and I, we have our anniversary coming up here Sunday.
You do?
And so we're, we
Is it a big one? Is it a big one?
It's 43, I think.
43?
That we've been married.
I'm going to give you an out here. Men do not remember those kinds of things and numbers and dates, but women do.
I think I'm probably more feminine on that regard. I try to remember important dates, birthday dates of family and even friends. I'm not as good anymore.
I need Facebook to tell me who's got anniversaries and birthdays and such. So.
Yeah, I agree.
Before we get to your story, I need to talk about our sponsor. Our sponsor, Buck and Honey's Restaurants, are a place that people can escape to. For me, it's a great escape from cooking dinner. Dick, do you cook dinner?
I'm not a very good cook. The answer is no.
The answer is no.
Yeah.
Can you make a peanut butter sandwich?
Oh God, I can. I can if the knife is proper.
The knife is proper. With their great food and drink menu, 5-star customer service, and a welcoming and vibrant atmosphere, people keep coming back with locations in Sun Prairie, Monona, Waunakee, and Mount Horeb. Most communities in Dane County, which encompasses the Madison metropolitan area and the surrounding communities, can get to a Buck and Honey's within 10 to 15 minutes. And this is where I do a little drum roll. Have you been to Buck and Honey's?
It actually has been. I have been probably 3 or 4 times, and it's where my wife and our daughters, where we meet for a birthday of any of us, and we love it.
Which one do you hit? Because
in Waunakee.
In Waunakee, yeah. Yep. I'm glad when the owner, Tom Anderson, who's a younger friend of mine from a Wisconsin Dells graduate like myself, told me that he was going to move into Waunakee. I'm like, yes. Now I don't have to go all the way to the home office, which is Sun Prairie. So next time you go, I would recommend the Bomber's Special Pizza. I've been eating that since mid-'80s, so it's a good pizza.
I think we'll try that.
Try that next time. On the podcast, our guests follow the format for sharing their story like this. In segment 1, we talk about what was it like, so we'll get into Dick's history, what happened to get Dick on the podcast, and in segment 2, we continue to talk about what happened and get into what it's like now and discuss Dick's 5 suggestions for thriving. Segment 1, what was it like before and what happened? You were raised in Dodgeville, Wisconsin, and I went to Platteville, and we'd go through from the Dells to Platteville. We'd always sneak around Dodgeville and go there and then hop on the big road and take that the rest of the way to Platteville. So I'm very familiar with Dodgeville. But you grew up in a completely different era of growing up in the 50s and 60s. And you also have a pretty cool story about something that happened in 1963, historic event, but we'll talk about that. What was life like growing up back then for you in Dodgeville, Wisconsin?
It's kind of a segment probably because I grew up a farm boy.
You did?
I'm the oldest of 7 kids, but 6 of us were born while we lived on the farm. And so we moved in 1956 from the farm. My dad came in and he delivered fuel oil in Dodgeville, went from farmer to fuel oil. And then later on he would be a car salesman, which would be that he was at several places there, but farm oil. So I went from kind of a rural school. I went to a one-room schoolhouse until I was in halfway through 4th grade, and then
some of our listeners are probably going, one-room schoolhouse. I've heard of that, but there's somebody who did.
It's crazy now. And then anyway, we went to a Catholic grade school, Dodgeville St. Joe's and St. Joseph's, and went to high school. We went my which would have been junior year, we went to a brand new high school
Oh,
that
you
was
did? Okay.
built. And
And they just recently either added on, they've got a beautiful gymnasium
Yeah.
that I've been in.
Yeah.
And you have to walk through the old one to get to the new one.
it hurts to walk. I mean, it kind of does in a way, but it is beautiful, and they've done a great job there. I'm proud to be a Dodgeville born and raised kid, and seeing the new building and what they've done is special.
You have an amazing wife of 45 years and two equally amazing daughters. Spin some yarns about them.
Well, I am remarried, and my wife and our consequent two daughters, that now one is 40 and one's a year and a half behind that, and they are the highlight, really, of my life. I am probably at the core of me is the word family. I just, I grew up the oldest on my mom's side, the oldest of 43 grandkids. So she was one of 9 children, and anyway, the oldest. And so my uncles and aunts were right in front of me to see. And on my dad's side, there were 5 of us grandkids and stuff. I was second oldest in that. But at any rate, so it kind of leads into who I am. But they were, they were very in front, and probably the people I grew up modeling a bit. Well, in the town of Dodgeville, when we moved off the farm, is that we would hear, Mom would send us down to get a loaf of bread or something, just maybe to get us out of the house. I don't know, but I mean, and we would go down there, and many times we would hear her say, "Well, you must be Ken and Moni's." That's my parents' kids, because you have those brown eyes. Well, I don't. You can see me, Tim. I don't have brown eyes anymore, so I don't know if the sun did that or whatever. But you just felt part of family. I mean, that people would say that they knew your parents, and that kind of spoke about. It leads into anything sports or whatever happened after that. That you were part of a family, and you'd be recognized as such. And I think Dodgeville was such an accepting community. I mean, it seemed that way as a young kid growing up, and I don't live there today, but I'm very special. Place my heart for that town for sure.
You attended Dodgeville High School in southwestern Wisconsin, just under an hour west of our great capital city of Madison, and you're a proud Dodger. You had a very successful high school experience, and because part of you is on here because we want to talk about some of your sports experiences, but there's also more than just sports to all of the us guys that played sports in high school. What were some of your favorite memories besides sports?
I think it would be, as a kid, we'd ride our bikes to another side of town, believe it or not. I mean, that wasn't that big, but we would
Seemed
go over
like it back then.
It did. I mean, as when I first moved into town, so I'm 10 or 11 at this time, I know who Bruce Harrison was, who later on would be a teammate, and we would take my neighborhood group, without getting into everybody's names, I won't probably remember, we'd go over there and play in the backyard of his house up near the old high school, and it was just kind of, I don't know, I remember Dodgeville's centennial year where, people dressed up like Governor Dodge and, things like that. So I think the memories were, it was just fun to be in town. There's so many, different than the rural part where you'd have to go a little distance to see your neighbors. And it was just, I think that was the thing that I liked the most. People would say hi to you. You'd walk down the street, and even later on when I became a teacher, people would say, "How come you say hello to everybody?" And I thought, it's just the way it was.
Doesn't everybody do that?
Yeah, it was just kind of Dodgeville, way.
After high school, you would take your talents to the University of Wisconsin, Whitewater. What was the lure of the University of Wisconsin, Whitewater? Did you have any other suitors?
Well, all during high school, I was a baseball pitcher, and a guy on our team, Corky Evans, who unfortunately had just passed not too long ago. But Corky was the catcher, and I was a year behind him as the pitcher, and we, we were, part of the teams, basketball, football, and baseball teams and stuff. And a couple times Coach Wilson took guys to a Badger basketball game up at the field house. And so before that, we would go to Badger Sporting Goods that was owned by one of the, all of a sudden I can't think of his name, with Johnny Kotz. Johnny Kotz was on the 41 National Basketball Championship team, I believe. And we would go in there, and Diney Mansfield would be, on a couple occasions, he was in the back room where a lot of their supplies and stuff were and stuff, and he would talk to me and Corky if we wanted to come to Wisconsin. Well, Corky was a year older. He ended up going to Wisconsin, but then he got drafted by the Baltimore Orioles and stuff like that. And it was just funny. All of a sudden, my attending it, because Corky wasn't there at UW, my attending it just seemed to go away. And I had a class in high school called Bookkeeping and Accounting that I thought, I like this a lot. So I went to Whitewater because it was a business school, it seemed. And
Whitewater was just far enough away and also close enough that if you needed to come back, you could.
Totally. And I really think it was driven by my business interest. I didn't know why, but it seemed that was at the time when you were a kid, and I was just still 17 when I graduated. I didn't probably know exactly how to handle it. But I'm the oldest, and away I went.
You had to handle it.
Yeah.
You would graduate with a degree in business education and a minor in safety education. You would start your teaching career across the border in Schaumburg, Illinois, and retire in 2002 after 35 years of teaching and coaching. What were some of your special moments in the classroom?
Oh, boy, that is so hard. Well, when I started, it was mostly girls that would be in my typing class, because at the time I think secretarial work was part of it. Memories that I would have, in 1980, somebody knocked on my accounting door when I was teaching it and said, Mr. Stevens, a class of 80 would like you to be their faculty speaker for graduation. Which at the time I thought...
My throat's locking up, by the way, right now. You want me to speak? Which I can do now. But
yeah. Well, at the time, it was just something that I think I had become in favor with some of the kids and stuff. I had changed what was considered at the time Letterman's Club, and I changed it because girls' sports had come in. And I changed the name, asked the district first, because there was 5 high schools in this district that I was in. And... I changed the varsity club, and we brought the girls cheerleaders, and girls sports had started, that they could be a part of it. I think that went over more than I ever thought about, that it was important to the kids. And so this knock on the door in 1980 was something that they seemed to say, we'd like you to be our speaker. And at first I said, can you give me a day to think about it? And so when I closed the door, I'm in shock, and I thought, get up in front of...
Palms are sweating already.
Yeah, well, and the one of the speakers is going to be our board of directors, who was the president of Union Oil at the time. He was the head of the school board, and anyway, I just was nervous. I thought, oh gosh, but the next day I thought, how can you refuse this? And so I did it, and it truly was a highlight of my life. As I got done, I spoke kind of at a different level maybe to the kids. When I got done, it was an instant. All the kids stood up, and parents too. I mean, it was very, very impacting on me, because I thought, oh my God, it worked, and they appreciated it. It was just talking about kind of the family aspect, and my Dodgeville background did have something to do with it. I can't say specifically what that might be, but
I imagine the message was, family, go out and conquer the world, but remember where you came from.
Well, it was kind of tell people. I asked the kids, I said, tell the people that are here tonight that you've invited, tell them that you love them. Don't wait until a long, long time down the road, or do it in an unobvious way. I said, just tell them that. And so after we got done, we went out to eat, and then a lot of the parents were there too. And I get goosebumps now talking about it.
I'm getting goosebumps.
They were just saying, what a wonderful message that had been delivered. And it was just kind of about them and their kids and their grandparents and their friends that they were going to maybe lose track of, and tell the people what you think. And there were some stories in there, but I'll leave it at that. It was just a wonderful experience.
You had a lengthy coaching career as well. What are some of your favorite memories in coaching? Oh,
boy. I mean, when I got the baseball job, I was in love with baseball. So that was the job that I got. But I coached men's basketball for 7 years, and then I got the girls' basketball freshman job for 23, and I did golf and stuff like that. But baseball was, one that I got. But the first year or second year as head coach, I was 3-17. And some of the kids on the team, they, a couple times they thought, you're not a very good coach. I felt that. And matter of fact, just last Friday, we went to a wake in Schaumburg, and one of the former kids came up to me, and he ended up being a police consultant at our school. I said, Bill was his name, Bill Morris, and I said, Bill, I kind of thought you guys didn't think I was a very good coach. And he just said, Coach, that's just the opposite. He said, you were kind of real. You weren't just about how many games we won and stuff like that. And it was, a nice feel that I got from hearing that, because I did in the back of my mind, I always thought we were 3-17 one year, and we never won the conference at any year I was the head coach, but it was a big conference and a very, very high level. I mean, God, if I could remember these, Dave Kingman one time would have come out of that conference, before me. And then, Mike Marshall that played for the Dodgers, and I'm just talking baseball, and multiple others, there were things. So we weren't playing against the Little Sisters of the Poor, but I kind of felt secondary as maybe a new school. We were a new school in 70 starting off. So I had a lot of coaches that I looked up to from the other teams, and learned a lot.
Just a good experience coaching kids and getting to know other coaches. And I was kind of the same way. I coached, and it was just the rapport that you had with the kids, and then the rapport you had with the other coaches, and see each other during the summer, and maybe even get together.
Yep.
Great memories. Let's go back in time. What comes to mind when I say 1964 WIAA Boys State Basketball Champions? What comes to mind?
What comes to mind, I was lucky enough to be in that era with many other athletes, good athletes in multiple sports and stuff like that. But it was...
By the way, when I said that and I looked over at you, you had a smile on your face. So
I felt like I was lucky to be one of 12 boys to be called champions of the state of Wisconsin one-class system. It was like... And when we were younger and getting to that point, even that year, it wasn't like our goal was to win the state championship, I don't think. The boys that were seniors that year, the starters on that 64 team, had been there the year before and got second in 63, along with some great senior athletes in 63. Anyway, I don't get into names, but they knew who they were. And anyway, it was just, I think, very special to come back and think they did it, we did it. We were all, I just think, just extremely fortunate. And there was something that happened there, and it wasn't just happening on that 64 team. It was kind of a all for one for all type of feeling that I got just growing up in that time and sitting on the bench and playing a lot. But it was just very special.
Well, I mentioned this to you earlier, but it's an honor to have you here because of the historian I am for high school basketball, and to be able, and I've growing up, and probably more recently in the last maybe 20 or 30 years, where I started to hear about the Dodgeville 64 team, and I've never met anybody. I've known some people that were part of that, and even some people that I knew, I didn't realize, like Denny Morgan, that he played on the 63 team. He missed the 64, but I've heard so much about the state champions and one class, and we're going to kind of, I'm going to doctor this up a little bit later, but we'll talk about that. So it's an honor to have you here. You were a very accomplished high school athlete, earning 9 letters, and that would be 4 in baseball. Baseball was kind of your sport, 3 in football, and 2 in basketball. Before we talk a little more about the basketball stuff, let's talk about football first. What was your role? You lettered 3 years. Talk about that a little bit.
Is now a good time to...
Yeah, you can...
There's a story that led to that. In Dodgeville at the time, and I would have been an 8th grader going to be in my freshman year. So it'd be about this time of the year or early August. My dad would ask me, we had always lunch as a family, so I'm the oldest of 7. Julie, our sister, was not born yet, so there was only 6 of us boys at the time. And Dad kept asking me, he said, Dick, are you thinking, because the boys are running, they're getting in shape, getting ready for football season, are you thinking of going out? And I would just go, I don't know, Dad. God, I don't know. Because I was probably not really just 100 pounds, maybe.
Soaking wet.
Soaking wet. There was a story about that, but not for now. I was just not a big kid. I was flexible enough and probably, athletic enough to run and catch and do things like that. But I was thinking I'm going to get my brains beat in going out for football. So he kept asking me that. It would seem as the days got closer to when you had to go in and have your physical and do all the things to get ready for football, he ended up, I don't think he pestered me, but it was something that was in my head day and night, and it's just like, should I, and stuff like that. And so being so little, I thought, I'm not a big enough man to be able to play that sport. And so anyway, he asked me one day in a sequence of days, and he said, Dick, what are you thinking? And I just at the dinner table with all my brothers sitting looking at me, they weren't very old yet, but is that I broke down and cried. I just started crying at the table, and I pushed my chair back and kind of hid my face from the table and my mom and dad and everybody. He tapped me on the shoulder. My dad did. I was sitting next to me and tapped me on the shoulder and said, I'll meet you in the car. And I didn't know if he was not a hard-nosed, punishing dad, strict in any way, just a good man. And so I went and got in the car. He never looked at me. We backed out and drove up near the hospital. Those that are from Dodgeville know what I was talking about. And anyway, turned the car off and looked straight ahead, never looked at me at any time or said a word to me at the time. And he said, Dick, your mother and I don't give a hoot, so to speak. He didn't say those exact words, but don't give a hoot if you go out for football. But if you do, I want you to kick it in the ass. Sorry about my swearing. Yeah. And turned the car on, drove back, dropped me off. He said, I got to go to work. He was a car salesman. And I went in, and there was my mother doing dishes, and all my brothers had evaporated someplace into the house.
Into thin air.
Yeah, and it was just my mom who was going to finish that lesson. She just was backing up, and I said, Mom, I'm sorry, because I'd broken down crying. I'm sorry, I get sentimental even talking about it. But I said, I'm sorry. And she said, Dick, just so you know, there are 6 other sets of eyes every time you, the oldest, are there that you're, that the younger brothers are seeing. And so at any rate, it left me with it left me very impression that I was kind of a leader and the oldest, and I needed to set a good example. Not that I needed to, but it was part of me. I thought I always wanted to be, do the right thing. I was pretty vanilla.
I wish there were more parents like your dad and mom around to be able to say those things that oftentimes go unsaid now. And again, I think it was just a different time back then where probably most parents had those kinds of conversations, and it just doesn't happen as much anymore. So I'm glad you shared that story, because it's heartwarming. Baseball was your sport. What do you recall from that as well? I mean, almost equally successful baseball career you had in high school, and you earned 4 letters, so you got an opportunity to get on the field as a freshman, which was rare back then.
Well, we had a guy named Johnny Kruba when I was 14, I guess. I mean, maybe even before that started the Babe Ruth baseball program in Dodgeville, and I was one of 2 pitchers. Eddie Richards and me, I think, were 2 of them at the time. And at any rate, we kind of grew up with baseball, and I grew up being a pitcher. And I think at the high school level, when I came in as a freshman, I mean, I guess I was considered to be able to be our pitcher, and I was. So, we ended up in my freshman year and sophomore year, I ended up being a freshman and sophomore pitching in the state tournament in a 1-class system, which at the time I just thought that's how it is. But in thinking back, I'm going, good God, I was skinny, little, and
100 pounds soaking wet.
Yeah, and I would practice throwing the ball into a box on one of the neighbors' garages and down in the basement in the wintertime. I grew up listening to the Milwaukee Braves, and Warren Spahn was my hero as a left-handed pitcher. So I would.
And those guys were all right back then.
They were pretty good. Yeah.
1964. You already touched on this, that the 1963 Dodger boys basketball team would finish as state runner-up. Mm-hmm. And you kind of sort of had an opportunity to play a role on that team coming up from the B team is what you call it. For the rest of us, it's the JV. Yep. And you were going to eventually come up, but there was a unique situation that happened. Talk about that 63 season and what you recall, and then go ahead and share that little story.
It's pretty funny in some ways and pretty meaningful in another way. But I was our JV team, so to speak, B team, ended up finishing undefeated that year, and the varsity is going to go on and eventually be runner-up in the state of Wisconsin, which at the time there was no indication that was going to happen. And so our season was done. I was dating a girl in high school that I was sitting next to in study hall, thinking that my season for basketball was open and getting ready for baseball probably in my mind and stuff. And Coach Wilson came in my 7th, 6th hour, doesn't matter, study hall, and he goes, "I'm looking for Stevens," or something like that. And I raised my hand, and he said, "Come out in the hallway." He just interrupted. He was kind of the king of Dodgeville High School. Mm-hmm. I mean, what he said kind of ran, so teachers gave into that. So I went out in the hallway, and he says, "Meet me at the pool hall tonight. Harrison is sick, and I want you to bring your stuff, and we'll leave whatever time we left at, and blah, blah, blah." And so all of a sudden I was...
And the reason he wants you at the pool hall is that's the team is going to start the tournament series, and that's where you guys hopped on the bus and you're going to go, and you're kind of getting the call up from the B team or the JV.
Well, it sounded like it. It was confusing to me because I hadn't practiced at that point, I don't think. But at any rate, we left from a pool hall where there was alcohol in the front. That's where it was kind of our base for everybody leaving, which is like, that doesn't seem like it was Coach Wilson's normal
first choice
place. I was like, we've questioned that. I know, me and another teammate. But so I got there, and all the way over, we at the time took 2 Greenbrier buses to the games, and I sat in between. I never forget Rick Brown and Pat Riley, I think, and I'm right in the seat behind Coach Wilson, and the entire time over there, as he always thought I was I was capable of making a lot of turnovers probably. He thought because I like to get up and go, and he was, at the time we were more slow down.
Push the tempo.
Yeah, and so he ended up talking to me all the way over, and the guys, after he'd turn around, Pat and Rick would kind of pat me on the shoulder. He'd say, "You'll be fine." And I thought, how am I going to play? There's all kinds of guys that are going to play. I thought, why is he saying this to me? So we got there, we got dressed. The game is about ready. We're getting ready to go out for a 25-minute warm-up time was kind of a rule at the time, and we could hear our fans, the student buses coming in. It was getting loud. Right just before we're getting ready to go out, he called me out outside the locker room, and he said, "Dick," he said, "I found out if I dress you, then Bruce will be ineligible for the rest of the year." And I thought, well...
And he's the guy that was sick.
He was the guy that was sick. And so at any rate, he said, I can't dress you. So I went back in, and I changed into my stuff. But after everybody had left, and now I'm just all by myself in the locker room changing, it hit me. I was probably a tender heart more than... It just made me cry, and I couldn't stop. And it was funny. So... The simple version is that when I got ready, I didn't want anybody, my class, I think other people in the school knew that I might be playing that night, not that I would even get in the game, but anyway, it was kind of small news, I think. But I went under the bleachers at Lancaster, and I stayed there the entire game. We won a close game. That was kind of the kickoff of the tournament. That's going to end up, we're going to be second in state. And we just, I think, survived it, but I never saw a minute of it because I was ashamed of looking like I had been a big ball baby, so to speak, or what they would say. And so I don't remember how I got home. I don't remember anything about it, but it was, then I ended up practicing with them. I think Bruce was, I don't remember.
Yep.
But Coach Wilson ended up, telling me, he said, "Dick, I'm going to take a couple of the seniors to the state tournament." And I never had any feeling that it was any different, but it sounded like he had in there, he was, saying maybe you would be a kid that I could bring along, just on the bench or something like that. And I thought, good for the seniors. I mean, good for those kids, because that girl I was sitting next to in study hall was somebody I thought, I have more time. I was kind of, all of a sudden, basketball was off. So anyway, that would be a silly story.
When you told me that story earlier, it was kind of touched me a little bit that here's a kid who had that opportunity to maybe get on the floor at least I get to be on the bench. Yep. And that was kind of wiped away from you. But after you thought about it and after you spent some time underneath the bleachers, you had a good upbringing and you understood the whole situation.
Well, and it was a motivator. As a kid, it was just like saying, Coach Wilson wasn't somebody that he would tell you all the time what you felt. Matter of fact, one time he said, Dick, when I stop yelling at you is the time you should worry, not when I say, hey, you're out of control, you're going too fast, and like some of the things he said. So anyway, it was a motivator. I thought he must care. There must be something that he sees. But I never considered myself capable or worthy of being anything more than being with my buddies. Mm-hmm. So at the time, it was mostly just juniors and seniors on the basketball team. And
1964, Dodgeville High School wins the one-class state basketball championship. And a lot of the listeners might be a little bit younger than that, where in the state of Wisconsin, for a long, long time, I think in the 70s it was Class A, Class B, mm-hmm. and then they added Class C. And then in the early 90s, they went with the divisions, 1, 2, 3, and then they added 4, and then they would eventually add 5. So instead of one state champion like 1964, mm-hmm. there's upwards of 5 now. Yep. And so when we refer to one class system, there was everybody was lumped into one, and we only had one state champion in Wisconsin. You were a junior on that team, essentially the sixth man. And so you would get in, you would come in and sub in for the guards, and then there was another guy that would come in and sub in for the forwards. Yep. But for the most part, you had a really good seat for the games. But you mentioned this in a phone conversation, that in a lot of the team game photos, you're sitting right next to Coach Weenie Wilson. And it makes sense that if you're the sixth man, you need to be by him. But there was another reason that I thought was so humorous, that the real reason you were next to him. Tell a story.
Well, we went from the old high school into this brand new school, and our very first game is going to be against Prairie du Chien. I'll never forget it, but it was moved back a couple days because President John F. Kennedy was assassinated, I think a day or two before we were supposed to play that game. So it was put back, and everything was new, everything was ready, and so we knew we had good seniors that were in front of us. So most of my classmates and a few of the seniors that were on the team as well, is that we would get together saying, who do you think is going to score the first point tonight? So, and we each put in, I'm pretty sure it was a quarter, those that wanted to do it. And there could
Which was a lot of money back then.
Oh, God. It's like maybe a paycheck for some of us. I mean, and so I don't know how we drew names and stuff. I say, I think it's Flynn. No, I think it's Corky. I think it's Bobby. And people would go through and they would pick it, and whoever would win, I think we divvied up whatever was in the pot. Now, when I say that, I can't say every kid did it, but I remember Mike Collins being, I think the person, Mike, if you're out there, I didn't mean to say you were doing bad, but whoever made the first basket, which I do not remember, but I thought Mike Collins was the first one. He got up off the bench like it was the winning basket at the end of the game when one of our guys scored. And so I remember Coach Wilson looking down, and then, it was only the first basket. So then the next game that we played, which it seemed it was another home game, somebody else got up and they're like, yeah, their guy scored the basket. And there might have been two people that had, so if it was Corky, two of them might have stand up, yeah, I got splitting of the pot. I don't think I ever won any of the pots, but I remember right after that happened, guys sit down, and Coach Wilson came down and grabbed me by the arm. And
very gingerly back the back.
Yeah, it wasn't a jerk. He was just saying, "Come with me," and I think I was sitting more towards the middle of the bench. It doesn't matter where I was sitting, but he says, "Come down and sit here." He says, "You are my sub for Bobby and Bruce, and Bobby Rock and Bruce Harrison. And then Kurt Anderson, he brought him down. He sat him next because he was going to sub probably a lot for Flynn and Corky. And then Tom Schleck, I think he was in the next seat. And he said, this is the way I sub, or something like that. So the only reference, if anybody's ever said I was a sixth man, I just was another player. But to me, I know Coach Wilson, that's what he said that day. He said, you're my sub. And I guess that's where the six-man thing came from. But it was, and I never won one of those pots.
And gosh darn it all. So your team you would go on to then make the state championship in 64, a repeat of 63.
Yep.
Tell us about the semifinal. Who did you beat, and what were your kind of thoughts on your personal highlights from the game?
Well, we had just barely survived Merrill, who had a very good team and actually led.
In the quarterfinals.
Yeah, in the quarterfinals, had probably had a chance to beat us. They were ahead until late in the game. I think we just won at the end or near the end. And so we were, we weren't so sure of ourselves, I don't think. And we were going to play a walk shot team. I think the guy's name is Mike Granger. Hopefully I got that name right. And he was a scoring in the Milwaukee area. He was a high scoring kid. And if there's one thing that Coach Weenie Wilson did, I mean, I thought we were raised on man-to-man concepts and principles and stuff, but he would incorporate other things. We had almost like a matchup 1-3-1 zone that we incorporated. And I don't know if we used it in that game to do something with him, but at any rate, we ended up winning by about 20, and it was just it was a good night for us to. I think it was a step up from the very first game, and I think we won 62-40 or something like that. It was we just shut them down.
And you'd get another seat at the championship table, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. Because our listeners want to hear the rest of the story, I need to talk about our sponsor one more time. Buck and Honey's has been with the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew since the beginning, with 4 locations in the Madison area. One is always near. People ask why Buck and Honey's. Owner Tom Anderson places a high priority on the mental health of his employees. He is a mental health professional available for them should they need support. I don't know how many businesses go above and beyond their EAP, Employee Assistance Program, but Tom Anderson and Buck and Honey's does. March 1964, you are a member of one of the Dodgeville boys basketball team. Your school does the unthinkable. It comes back to the championship game. You win the state championship in a one-class system, and I had mentioned this already. There's no Class A, B, and C. There's no 5-division tournament. It's one champion wins the one winner take all tournament. In segment 2, Dick is going to share what that time meant to him to be on that team. He will also talk about life after. So please stay tuned. Don't change that channel. You're not going to want to miss segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. We will be back.
If you, a loved one, or someone you know is experiencing a physical, mental, or emotional crisis, there is help and resources out there. Contact NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness Helpline, at 1-800-950-6264. This is a free service providing information, resource referrals, and support to people living with a mental illness, their family, providers, and the public. United Way 211 is available 24/7, 365 and offers free confidential assistance. They connect people with the local programs and services that can help. Dial 211. Emergency Crisis Services, dial 911. The Suicide Prevention Lifeline, dial 988. To connect via web, chat, visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Along with those numbers, there is help. You just need to say 3 words. I need help. Now, back to the show.
We are back. Welcome back to segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Tim Decora. We are in the Buck and Honey's remote studios on the east side of our great capital city of Madison, Wisconsin. The podcast is where we feature guests who share their story in hopes of helping others who may be struggling with what life throws at them. Dick Stevens is here today to share his story and recollections about the 1964 Dodgeville State Championship team and life after that amazing feat. He's here to share his story and how he has survived and thrived since. In March 1964, you win the semifinal against Waukesha, and you are in the state championship game for the second consecutive year. Your opponent is Milwaukee North. Tell us about that state championship game from your point of view.
Well, I think we were totally intimidated, and you grew up in Dodgeville, Wisconsin. I think there was a person in another town, Highland, that had a person of color and stuff. And so we, in that side of the state at the time, I just don't remember seeing, as many people of color, which had nothing. We just didn't see it much. So now we're going to play kids that could jump out of the gym. And I mean, we're just electric. They had a kid named Blanton Simmons who was averaging, I think he was still the scoring leader of the tournament that year. I might be wrong on that, but he was good. Esthesio Ford. A couple of those kids played, I thought, for Al McGuire at Marquette at the time. And they just were a very talented team. And we just, in our methodical, I guess is what people like to call it, type of approach, we knew who we wanted to guard well. And Coach Wilson was a very strong strategy person. I mean, he was a defensive guru in basketball. I think he did the same in football. But anyway, we were very excited, but he told us when we went out for warm-ups, at the time you could dunk in pregame, and I don't know how many of their guys could dunk, but it was a lot more than ours. And we were not to look down at the other end to watch that, because you could hear the oohs and ahs of that taking place. And so we were behind, I think, the first half, maybe by 5 or something like that. And I remember we came in, and I remember Coach Wilson turning and say, "We can beat these guys." And he just looked at everybody, and it was just like, if he feels that, then that was a big comment on it. And we just, in the second half, just methodically just kept doing what we do. And we had some talented kids, and they played hard and wore them down. I think they wanted to be more up-tempo, and we weren't. So it was just a thrill to sit there on the bench and watch it in front of a packed house at the field house. At
the old field house.
Yeah.
So you get awarded the state championship.
Yep.
The seniors probably go out. Coach Wilson hoists it first, or he hands it to the seniors, and
Yep.
they hoist the thing up, and
Yep.
there's hooting and hollering, and orange and black in one end, and maybe
Yep.
blue and white for Milwaukee
That's what it
North
was.
in the other. And then let's talk about the ride home, the bus trip. What memories do you have of taking the old 51 all the way back to Dodgeville?
Well, we would go through Verona, Mount Horeb, Barneveld, Ridgeway. The road at the time went right through that. And we were, of course, leading in the Greenbriers, but as we would go through each town, I think in every town there would be people to greet us. I mean, it wasn't, I don't know if it's spilling over into the streets, but it seemed like it. It was just like we were coming back from World War II veteran. I mean, and in a way to us, it's like, oh my God, what's going on here? And each of those towns was just so greeting to us. I mean, just well greeting, whatever the word.
The kids from just down the road won the state championship game. Let's freaking get out on the streets and hoot and holler for them.
And there were signs on the way up. I remember Barneville had one. It's in our yearbook, I think, in there, good luck at state Dodgers. And, it was just wonderful. And I know at one point, and we were almost to Dodgeville, and we came to a high point where you could look back behind us towards Ridgeway area, and it was just like in the Field of Dreams. I mean, where all the cars at night, when they come, it was a stream of traffic. It was hard to believe. I mean, but it's real. And they said it was like all the way to Ridgeway. They said it was a 7-mile lineup of cars, which I can't attest to, but we did stop at the top. They'll slow down, and we all got to look back, and it was like, wow. So when we got into town, I'll never forget, at the time, one of our cheers, this is going to sound silly, like I was a cheerleader, but we would say, "We are the Dodgers, the mighty, mighty Dodgers." Everywhere we go, people want to know who we are. So we told them, "We are the Dodgers." And that was, as we got to the courthouse in Dodgeville, and people were tapping on the car and on the Greenbrier and stuff like that. I remember the guys who I was sitting with in the car, that's what we were saying. We were pretty proud of being, it was starting to sink in.
The beginning of adulthood brought so much success, and it was something later in life at age 66 that would test you physically. And you were diagnosed with 99% blockage in your heart, sometimes referred to as the Widowmaker. So since the show has a mental health component, you mentioned initially being a little down and depressed, that you were having these troubles physically. What were you kind of feeling when there was some talk of you might have some health issues?
It was, I guess all of it was self-understood, because I was kind of complaining about just the left of my breastbone here, is that I was feeling something when I would get on and work out, because I just had my hip replaced, and I would get on and go about 3 minutes, and then I would notice something, and so there was a very, I don't want to make him like he's anything bad, but an overweight, heavier guy that doesn't seem like he worked very hard in the gym, but he heard me talking to somebody else about it, and he says, he told me that he had a friend that had the same sign, and he had just passed away, and it set me into a negative mode. Well, what it actually was, he was a bit of a guardian angel, is that his saying to me is that he had this friend, and I was almost taken back, because I thought, I can take care of this. I don't need you telling me that. I'm not going to die. And I thought, so in the end, I'm going to find out that I had 99.9. I mean, it was almost completely blocked. And I considered him now as a guardian angel at the time. And I've never seen him since, but it was just kind of how it brought me to thinking, I got to act on this. And so I think it was my commitment to not be afraid of what the result would be, is that I said, I got to check this out.
But that would soon give way to a little bit of fear and worry, which is essentially what we would call anxiety now. And we're going to fast forward now to your getting wheeled in. You go in to finally get this checked out, and I'm actually going to let you talk, because you mentioned that little story.
Yep.
Go ahead and talk.
Well, my wife and I, we were lucky enough to travel. We had a place that people had let us use over time in Maui, and we had been over there and taken hikes and doing what it was. And just a week before, our daughter, Jennifer, who is a nurse, was going to come and visit us. We had taken this hike, and it would be about 300 yards, 60-degree angle to go up to the trailhead where we were. And so my wife and I, Debbie, had gone and done this trip. And we said, hey, Jenny, when she came a week later, why don't we take you here? It's a good little trip. Well, in that week time, something had changed, because I followed them up, but I had to stop multiple times. And I knew something was wrong. And here's Jenny, a nurse, and I thought, I don't want her to worry about it. So I let it go, and there's more to the story. But when we got back from this trip, I ended up calling to get an appointment to have a test done. I said,
get this checked out.
To get it checked. And so I kind of did it on my own, and I went in for it. There's more to the story. When I got there that morning, I thought, well, I need to stretch and do things for it, because I'm going to do it's going to be cardio, stress test and stuff. And I thought, well, I'll just walk down, and it's only probably 20 yards down a slight little incline. And on the way down, I started to feel it again. And I thought, well, that came really quick. And
you're going downhill, not up.
Exactly. And so I turned to go back up. I thought, oh my God, what's going on? And a big garbage truck came and pretty much made me stand still for a while. So I'm on the inside of the building next to a garbage truck. Not that it has anything to do with it. I bring that up because I thought, I felt like I was... I don't mean waste, but I felt like the garbage truck is symbolic of kind of where I was at.
How you're feeling.
Kind of. And so I just leaned against the building, and this was a part of me that probably at no other time in my life, maybe I went through a divorce earlier in my life, but had I been to where I'm going, what in God's name is going on here? And I just paused, because I had no place to go for probably a minute, 2 minutes. And then I went up and did the test, and as it turned out, I thought I'd done well. I didn't have any more of that. Only the doctor came in, a cardiologist came in and asked me to tell my story, and I told him about Maui and finding out that I had an issue there. And he said, well, we're going to check that out. And I said, well, tomorrow you want me to come back? And he says, no. He said, there'll be a wheelchair here for you and shortly. And I said, well, can I go call my wife? Because my cell phone was in the car. He said, no. He said, you can call. We have a phone here. So it scared me. It made me feel like Al-Qaeda. I don't mean to make that into a thing, but I've been captured. I've been, and I was
held against your will.
Yeah. And so the wheelchair came and they steered me what seemed like it was about a 2-hour trip, which is probably, 10 minutes, to take me to my room. And I called my wife and I said, Debbie, they're not letting me go. And she said, I'll be right there. And it was, I don't know, it was just such a big surprise and something that was a definitive type of moment because they were going to check me out. So they did an angiogram or whatever it was. And then they told me, the guy that did that said, it looks like we're going to need to do bypass. The stenting won't work. And anyway, it was a big surprise. So my wife came, and eventually my daughters came, and Debbie's friend Susan came, and we were standing there. And this is now after I knew that they were going to do triple bypass. So it was, I think the next day they're going to do open heart surgery on me, quadruple bypass or triple bypass. I said quadruple. It's not true.
So we fast forward to the next day, and they got you on the cot or the wheel. They're going to get you ready to wheel you in.
Yep.
And they're probably telling you, hey, let's pretty sure you're going to come out of this, but let's have you talk to your wife and kids and friend before you go in. Is there any last things you want to say?
Well,
go ahead and tell it.
Yeah, just before that, actually, Tim, you're right on with that, is that I'm in the room and I'm going to have open heart surgery coming up.
Pretty serious stuff.
Yeah, and the surgeon that's going to do it comes into my room. He's got the headgear on. It looks like he's getting ready to go get ready. And he said, and he walks in the room. He said, I'm looking for Richard Stevens. And I said, well, that's me. And he says, I was just wondering if you have any questions. And there's another part of the story, but about my daughter, who had told him that I was fearful of them putting a tube down my throat. And so I asked him about that. There's more to that story, but the main thing is that he says, do you have any questions, Dick? And I said, the only thing I know is that, Doctor, I am scared, and I can't use the word, but are you okay?
Absolutely.
I'm scared shitless. And he looked at me and he says, Mr. Steven, no, I said, but if you can let me wake up, I can do the rest. I can handle that. And he said, Mr. Stevens, we are the third generation of cardiologists, and your chances of not waking up are like less than 1% or, very, very slim. And it was the biggest encouragement. And I think out of that, to tell the story to all of you people that are listening to this, is that that's all I needed, because I knew my self-determination that I think sports had a lot to do with, my self-determination and my interest in, I'll do whatever it is, just, don't let me leave now, because you got your kids and your wife and everybody. I wasn't ready for that. I had just running an errand, having this test done, and the next thing I know, I was captured. And so at any rate, it gave me great confidence, and now they're going to wheel me down. So all four of us leave the room, 2 daughters, wife, and Susan, and we're going down. It looked like nobody else was in the hospital. So I had them, I said, if we're going to go do this, can't we play a little music or something? So one of my daughters had it, and they play We Are Family. So we're going down for me to have triple bypass, and it was just that family feeling that I got that just made it, like I said, okay, I gained confidence. We went in the room, and now they're putting the IVs and stuff in me, and my one daughter, Jennifer, who I stood behind me, I think, every time stuff came, was there, and I couldn't see her face, but Jessica was right next to me, and she started to cry, and I said, Jess, and it kind of relates to another part of my story that happened when I was thinking of, should I go out for football or not, and my dad taking me for that ride that I told you previously about, and him just saying, hey, anyway, saying the thing that I'm going to say to Jessica, I said, Jess, just so you know, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to kick ass, which is what he told me that day. And there was no plan. That just came naturally. And as it turned out, I did. I did, and the rest is just, but anyway, those things at those moments where I had confidence, even in the darkest fear, my darkest fear, is the confidence that you have and how important it is to have family.
That is such a great story of how you tied in what your dad said to you, and then you were paid attention, and then somewhere in your brain you said, I'm going to do the same thing with my daughter, and it just came out organically, and it probably made her feel good that my dad is going to be okay. He's got this. Well, when it rains, it pours. You had your hips replaced and a double hernia in 2018. You're falling apart, but they put you kind of back together like Humpty Dumpty. But I always say that setbacks are setups for comebacks. You've retired, and with all these new parts and certainly better physically, what's Dick Stevens up to now?
I feel like if I combine me as a dad and a husband and as a father and as a teacher, I think I've learned, and it's in lots of different ways, to tell the story, to preserve like the 64 stuff and pictures of things that happened that are meaningful to me, because at the core of all that, athletics and my parents and the aunt and uncles and all these people are in the past have served as great role models. And I guess I feel like the oldest of so many grandkids and my siblings, and I just keep telling the story.
I think you're going to save somebody's life, either somebody listening to the story or somebody's listening and it's going to pass that on that, hey, Mom, Dad, I've noticed this thing happening, and I want you to go get it checked out because of the Widowmaker, because this guy that played a role on this basketball team became a teacher and coach, had this happen. Somebody's life is going to be changed by the story that you're telling here, and that's really essentially why I wanted you to come on. My initial thought was, I'm a historian and I want to be in the presence of glory of 1964 state champions. But as it turns out, you have a slightly better story that is probably going to save lives, and the story of your triple bypass and the Widowmaker, and how if
that would be the case, that would be an honor for sure.
Such a great story. This is where the subscribers, followers, and listeners take out their notebooks, pens, and pencils, and we're going to jot some things down, take some notes. Here are Dick Stevens, 5 suggestions that have allowed him to survive and thrive. And I know we mentioned this earlier, that you're a baseball player, and sometimes baseball players can't hit softballs because they come in so darn slow. But I'm going to toss these in underhand style, and I'm going to ask you to go ahead and hit these in about 60 seconds or less. And here are the things that you shared. 5 suggestions that have allowed you to survive and thrive throughout a great high school, college, athletic career, 35 years plus of teaching and coaching, and then having to go through some physical setbacks along the way have kind of helped you. So, number 1, faith in yourself and God. Hit that in 60 seconds.
That's just who I am. I mean, I guess that took 3 seconds, but faith in God has been something they're raised through. I'm Catholic, not that has anything to do. I just have great faith, and had parenting that kind of guided it, especially our mother and stuff like that.
Number 2, experiences in life that gave you the attitude of never give up. Go ahead and hit that.
I definitely was a never give up. I was probably, for not a big person, I was very competitive. And it just made me, I'm going, no, that ain't going to happen. My daughter at one time, through her high school time, ended up talking about quitting her basketball. It was in St. Charles, Illinois and stuff. And I talked to her in her room, and I'll never forget it. And I think she feels the same way. Jessica said she was thinking of quitting and stuff. And I said, we just don't quit, Jess. We just don't quit. There's positive in it. And there's a story there, too. But she went to school the next day and actually found out, because from somebody that was looking up to her, because she didn't get to play all the time. And she had somebody that was watching her and how positive she was reacting. It was almost, again, God intervening, of divine intervention, of helping send the message as a dad to my daughter, and we just don't quit.
This then kind of leads into the next number 3 here, which is be a good leader or an example setter. And you already talked about that with the car ride and your dad and et cetera. And then go ahead and talk about that.
Well, I have been called a couple times a facilitator, and by a couple classmates, at least one, I remember, and he said, Dick, you keep bringing us together. So we have guys that graduated in 65 that are mine, and we're going to play actually next Wednesday will be our group. We have 8 of us yet. And then we go back in September to Dodgeville to play in a scholarship golf outing that we currently will be giving our class, right now it's about $3,000 to one student that meets the criteria that the school wants and stuff like that. So I kind of gather the cats, so to speak, and then we have such great classmates that were many of them part of the teams that were part of that 63, 64, all that stuff. And so they sometimes say, Dick, you bring us together. And I thought, no, I don't. Some of you guys brought us together earlier. So I think as a group, we just all get it, and I'm part of that, is trying to get us organized. And
number 4, work hard because of what you might have lacked. And that was always being a little bit smaller to begin with and some size. And so you had to work harder because of that. Go ahead and hit that.
I just think that's it. I try to go to the gym. I have diabetes and do what I can for myself. I don't do it perfectly. There's too many things going on, but doing the best I can, I think.
And the last one, number 5, serve others and stay positive. Go ahead and hit that.
Well, I think so many people are living their own lives, especially in today's world and cell phones and stuff like that. They're all looking down. They're not looking at those that sit across from them or they talk to or they run into, or that sometimes you just offer a warm greeting. And I've had this happen, and I would say now, because I think my kids and my wife and stuff like that, they always tell me, they say, Dick, are you running for office? Are you trying to? And I'm going, so if we go to an event, a lot of times might be near the end of the last ones to leave, because those moments are moments that you can express to people, telling an old story or whatever it is, but it helps them feel that there is somebody that cares more about something shared mutually. But I would suggest to all your audiences, just open up your mouth and talk to the people that you're near and care to, and don't be afraid of stepping on toes. I'm not talking politics. I'm just talking about human characteristics. We all need each other.
Well said. What a great episode. I'm so glad you could join the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew today. Your story and how you took what you experienced at a young age and shared with your students for years is inspiring. And I'm sure you inspired them. Your story reminds us all to have coping skills or mental health tools in the toolbox when a person is met with challenges later in life. And despite that, you have survived and thrived. Our call to action. Dick Stevens just shared his incredible story and what it's like to be a part of something so remarkable early in life. That 64 state championship team, thrive in teaching and a coaching career, and take on some health issues later in life. Here are Dick's 5 suggestions that helped him survive and thrive. Number 1, faith in yourself and God. Number 2, experiences in life that gave him the mental attitude to never give up. Number 3, be a good leader or an example setter. Number 4, work hard because of what he thought he might have lacked. And number 5, serve others and stay positive. Final thoughts as we close another great episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. Are there any final thoughts, Dick Stevens?
Well, I think a guy like Tim Decora and what you're doing for people and just opening a door or putting a crack in the window where you can see things not in your own world, but see things as how meaningful you are to the world. Everybody is, and you just don't know it. So I never thought of myself as anything more than being one of 12 boys, being on that team in 64. And we had a great relationship on the team. There was not any selfishness, it was all for one for all type of thing.
My goal is to have 2 to 3 more 1964 Dodgeville Dodgers on here to hear some more stories from a different point of view. But I think you having that message of what happened later in life, that you had to overcome some things, is maybe a little bit bigger role than being on the 64 title team, and that you're going to help somebody who may have to travel that same road. On our next episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, we will have another amazing guest in the Buck and Honey's Remote Studios who will share how they learned to survive and thrive. If you have a story to share or you know someone who does, please reach out to me at tdecor@gmail.com. Until next time, hang in there with whatever you happen to be going through, and with hard work, dedication, and determination, you can survive and thrive. Until next time, take care.